On December 8, 2025, at exactly 11:15 in the evening, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake violently shook the eastern coast of Aomori Prefecture in northeastern Japan. Just 4 days later, on December 12th, the same region experienced another powerful tremor, this time magnitude 6.9, triggering fresh tsunami warnings and sending thousands of residents fleeing to higher ground. While the world watched these two devastating seismic events unfold in real time, Japanese authorities were not only concerned about what had already happened, but about what might still come. And on December 19th, amid this alarming sequence of earthquakes, the Japanese government released a projection that made even the most experienced disaster specialists reconsider the severity of the situation. For Filipinos watching these events from across the Pacific, the question is unavoidable. Could the same thing happen here in the Philippines, and are we as prepared as Japan? The Japan Meteorological Agency issued something that had never been done before on this scale. A preventive earthquake warning for the Hokkaido and Sanriku coast, covering no less than 182 cities and towns across 7 different prefectures. This alert was not issued simply because of the magnitude 7.5 or 6.9 earthquakes that had already occurred. It was issued because of the possibility of a third, much more destructive event that seismologists classify as a posterior earthquake, meaning a major quake of magnitude 8 or higher that can follow a sequence of smaller tremors in the same fault zone. When you understand what this term really means, the situation becomes even more alarming, and the parallels to the Philippines become impossible to ignore. Between December 8th and 12th, 35 earthquakes of intensity 1 or higher were recorded in the Aomori region. To put this in perspective, that represents almost 9 tremors per day in just 4 days. In the city of Hachinohe, where seismic intensity reached level 6+ on the Japanese Shindo scale that goes up to 7, a steel tower installed atop an NTT building was damaged, forcing the evacuation of 65 people and the closure of a section of National Route 45. But the number that really matters, the one that keeps scientists and authorities on maximum alert, is 8. Magnitude 8. The Japan Meteorological Agency made it very clear that the probability of this magnitude 8 or higher event is above normal, which in technical terms means it has increased from approximately 0.1% to about 1% in the coming days. That may sound like a small number, but when you are talking about an event that could release 5.6 times more energy than a magnitude 7.5 quake, even a 1% probability demands urgent attention. In the new projection released by the Japanese government on December 19th, a magnitude 7 earthquake in the Tokyo metropolitan area could destroy up to 402,000 buildings. That is not a typo. 402,000 buildings completely destroyed. We are not just talking about the capital itself, but an area that includes 7 neighboring prefectures such as Kanagawa, Saitama, and Chiba, home to more than 37 million people. To give Filipinos a sense of scale, this is equivalent to practically every residential structure in Metro Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal being reduced to rubble in a matter of minutes. The study makes clear that the main cause of loss of life would not be the earthquake itself, but the lethal combination of building collapses and subsequent fires, especially if the event occurs during a winter night when people are sleeping and heating systems are turned on. The earthquake that struck Aomori on December 8th had its epicenter off the eastern coast of the prefecture at a depth of approximately 54 kilometers. When an earthquake occurs at this relatively shallow depth, seismic waves have less time to lose energy before reaching the surface, which explains why the tremors were felt so intensely across such a wide area, even as far as Tokyo. The 6+ seismic intensity recorded in Hachinohe means it was practically impossible to remain standing during the tremor, and heavy objects like furniture were thrown around the environment as if they were toys. Just 4 days later, when many residents were still processing the trauma of the first earthquake, the ground shook again with magnitude 6.9. This second event was not a simple aftershock of the first. It was a significant earthquake in its own right, strong enough to generate its own tsunami warning and to force over 9,000 people to evacuate their homes. Now let's bring this story home to the Philippines. While Japan was dealing with this crisis in December 2025, the Philippines itself was no stranger to seismic activity. On September 30th, 2025, a strong magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck Cebu and nearby provinces, with its epicenter causing surface rupture along the Bogo Bay Fault. PHIVOLCS mapped the co-seismic deformation using satellite imagery, showing clear evidence of how Philippine faults behave when they slip. This was a vivid reminder that the Philippines sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, just like Japan, and that our country is crisscrossed by active faults capable of producing devastating earthquakes. The difference, and this is the uncomfortable truth that every Filipino needs to understand, is that Japan has spent decades and invested billions of dollars in earthquake preparedness, building codes, early warning systems, and public education. The Philippines has made progress, especially through collaborations between PHIVOLCS and international partners like JICA, but we are still far behind in terms of infrastructure resilience, public awareness, and enforcement of building standards. When a magnitude 7.5 quake hit Aomori, Japan's early warning system gave people precious seconds to prepare. Automated systems stopped trains, opened elevator doors, and sent alerts to millions of smartphones. When a magnitude 6.9 quake hit Cebu, PHIVOLCS monitored it and issued information. But many buildings that collapsed or sustained damage were not built to resist such forces, and evacuation procedures were inconsistent. The alert, issued by the Japan Meteorological Agency, covers a gigantic area that includes the entire island of Hokkaido to the north, descending along the eastern coast through the prefectures of Aomori, Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima, reaching as far as Ibaraki and Chiba, which are close to Tokyo. 182 municipalities are on alert, with a combined population of millions of people living under the shadow of a possible megaquake. If we were to draw a similar scenario for the Philippines, imagine PHIVOLCS issuing a preventive alert covering every province from Cagayan in the north down through Metro Manila, Calabarzon, Bicol, and into the Visayas, warning that a magnitude 8 earthquake could strike at any time following a sequence of smaller quakes. How would our cities respond? Would our buildings hold? Would our people know what to do? The Japanese government's projection of 402,000 destroyed buildings in Tokyo and the metropolitan region considers both the direct collapse caused by the tremor and the destruction caused by fires that spread out of control while firefighting systems are compromised. Tokyo and its 7 neighboring prefectures form the world's largest metropolitan area with more than 37 million inhabitants. A megalopolis where cutting-edge skyscrapers with anti-seismic technology coexist with older constructions, where wide avenues intertwine with narrow alleys, and where population density in some neighborhoods exceeds 20,000 people per square mile. Metro Manila, with roughly 13 million people in the capital region and millions more in surrounding provinces, faces similar challenges. A mix of modern high-rises and older structures, extremely high population density, and infrastructure that would struggle to function after a major earthquake. Japanese collective memory still bears the scars of the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, which reached magnitude between 7.9 and 8.3 and devastated Tokyo and Yokohama, killing at least 105,000 people. About 70% of casualties were caused by fires that spread uncontrollably through the city. It was this earthquake that completely transformed Tokyo's urban planning, leading to the implementation of the world's most rigorous building codes. The Philippines has its own history of devastating earthquakes. The 1990 Luzon earthquake, which killed more than 1,600 people and caused widespread destruction. The 2013 Bohol earthquake, which damaged thousands of buildings and historic churches, and countless smaller but still destructive events. Yet despite this history, enforcement of building codes remains inconsistent, and many Filipinos still live in structures that would not survive a major quake. While authorities in Japan try to prepare the population for a possible magnitude 7 earthquake in Tokyo and a magnitude 8 in the Aomori region, the long-term threat of the Nankai Trough looms over the entire country. This 560-mile, 900-kilometer subduction zone extends along the southwestern Pacific coast of Japan, passing exactly beneath the Tokaido Corridor, the megalopolis that concentrates 80 million people between Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, and Kyoto. The Japanese government estimates at 70 to 80% the probability of a magnitude 8 to 9 earthquake occurring in this fault over the next 30 years, with potential for 230,000 to 298,000 lives lost and damages exceeding $1.8 trillion. The Philippines has its own version of the Nankai Trough threat. The Philippine Trench, the Manila Trench, and the network of inland faults, such as the West Valley Fault, the Marikina Fault, and dozens of others mapped by PHIVOLCS. Studies conducted jointly by PHIVOLCS and JICA have projected that a magnitude 7.2 earthquake on the West Valley Fault could kill over 33,000 people in Metro Manila alone and destroy more than 168,000 buildings. These are not distant hypothetical scenarios. They are realistic projections based on the same scientific methods that Japan uses. Despite this entire alarming sequence of events in Japan and the devastating projections released by their government, surveys conducted after similar alerts in August 2024 showed that only 27.7% of Japanese people checked their water and food supplies, and measures considered essential, such as always carrying an emergency backpack, were adopted by a mere 9.7% of respondents. There is a psychological phenomenon known as alert fatigue, where the population becomes progressively less responsive to disaster warnings when they don't materialize immediately. If even the highly disciplined and disaster-conscious Japanese population struggles with this problem, imagine how challenging it is in the Philippines, where earthquake drills are less frequent and where many people still believe that their area is safe simply because a major quake has not happened recently. The Japan Meteorological Agency made it very clear that the preventive alert issued after the Aomori earthquakes does not mean people should evacuate their homes or interrupt their daily activities. The objective is for the population to reinforce their basic preparations, reconfirm evacuation routes, secure heavy furniture that could topple during a tremor, stock drinking water for at least a week, maintain non-perishable foods, flashlights, battery-operated radios, and a first aid kit. These are simple measures, but they can make the difference between life and death when the ground begins to shake violently at 3 a.m. For Filipinos, the same advice applies, but with an added urgency. We do not have the same level of infrastructure resilience that Japan has built over decades, which means individual and family preparedness becomes even more critical. Japan is recognized worldwide as a reference in natural disaster preparedness, with regular drills in schools and companies, early warning systems that function nearly perfectly, and building codes that have transformed structures into true anti-seismic fortresses. The rate of earthquake-resistant homes in the country increased from 79% in 2008 to nearly 90% in 2023, and 86% of municipalities regularly conduct disaster drills. The Philippines has been working to catch up, and collaborations such as the 3-year project between DOST, PHIVOLCS, and JICA aim to strengthen disaster preparedness through enhanced capacity for earthquake monitoring, tsunami early warning, and improved communication of hazard information. But progress has been slow, and the gap between what we need and what we have remains dangerously wide. As of mid-December 2025, Japan lifted its week-long alert on increased quake risk after careful monitoring showed that the immediate danger had passed. However, seismologists remain vigilant, knowing that the patterns observed in Aomori could repeat at any time, and that the long-term threat of the Nankai Trough remains unchanged. For the Philippines, there is no alert to lift because the threat is always present. Our faults are active, our tectonic plates are constantly moving, and the question is not whether a major earthquake will strike, but when. 182 Japanese cities continue to live with the knowledge that they are in a high-risk zone, and their residents go about their daily routines knowing that the ground beneath them could shake violently at any moment. In Tokyo, 37 million people move through a city where 402,000 buildings could be destroyed if the earth decides to shake with magnitude 7. Along the entire Japanese Pacific coast, from Hokkaido to the south, the Nankai Trough remains silently accumulating tectonic tension that sooner or later will be released in one of the largest earthquakes modern humanity has ever witnessed. The question for Japan is not if it will happen, but when. For the Philippines, the parallels are impossible to ignore. Metro Manila sits on top of the West Valley Fault. Cebu experienced a magnitude 6.9 quake with surface rupture just months ago. PHIVOLCS has mapped dozens of active faults across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. We know where the danger zones are, we know what kind of shaking to expect, and we know that our building standards and public preparedness are not yet at the level they need to be. The lesson from Japan's December 2025 earthquake sequence is not that we should panic, but that we should prepare. Japan, with all its advanced technology and strict enforcement, still faces the possibility of catastrophic damage. The Philippines, with fewer resources and weaker infrastructure, must work even harder to close the gap. If this video has helped you understand what is happening in Japan and why it matters for the Philippines, like, subscribe, and share it with your family, neighbors, and local officials. The time to prepare is not after the ground starts shaking. It is right now, today, while we still have the luxury of time. And if you want to see the detailed breakdown of the West Valley Fault threat to Metro Manila, the tsunami risks from the Philippine Trench, and what PHIVOLCS is doing to monitor these dangers, watch the other videos on this channel that map out the hidden threats beneath our islands.